The market of Kael'tar was always full of light and sound. Glowing crystals floated above the streets and alien voices filled the air. Children ran through the stalls. Vendors shouted about rare spices, weapons, and ancient trinkets. It was a place where humans were still strangers, but today one human walked among them. His name was Daniel. He was a maintenance worker on the nearby station, a simple man with calloused hands and tired eyes. He had no family here, no power, no wealth, yet somehow he found himself laughing with Lyra, an alien girl with silver hair and eyes that glowed faintly blue. She liked to tease him, liked to make him uncomfortable, but not in a cruel way, more like a friend who wanted to see how far she could push a human. On this day, they wandered into a stall that sold relics. Old armor pieces rested on display stands, each carved with glowing lines that pulsed like living veins. The shopkeeper warned children not to touch, for these were said to be ancestral treasures. Lyra grinned, her sharp teeth catching the light. She looked at Daniel and whispered, "Want to look like a hero for once, human?" She pulled out a chest plate, heavier than it looked. It shimmered faintly like it had been waiting for centuries. Daniel chuckled nervously. "That thing looks older than my grandmother's house," he said. "Probably break if I sneeze on it." "That," Lyra said, holding it up to him, "belonged to my ancestor, a war champion. Only the strongest of my people ever wore it." Then she smirked, her voice mocking but playful. "But maybe, just maybe, even a weak human can try it on just for a laugh." The shopkeeper's eyes widened. "No, child," he hissed. "That armor is sacred. It has been dead for generations. Don't mock it." But the girl ignored him. She pressed the armor against Daniel's chest. "Come on," she said. "Let's see if you can carry it, or will you fall flat on your back?" Daniel hesitated. His instincts told him to laugh it off and walk away. But the crowd had already turned to watch. Aliens whispered, their expressions amused. Humans were rare here, and a human making a fool of himself was free entertainment. With a sigh, Daniel lifted his arms. "Fine," he muttered, "but don't blame me when I drop it on my foot." He slid the chest plate over his body, expecting it to feel cold, heavy, and awkward. Instead, the world shifted. The moment the armor touched him, every glowing line across its surface lit up. At once, the pulsing veins burned like fire, spreading across his chest and shoulders. His breath caught. He stumbled, but not from the weight. From the sudden rush of energy. The crowd gasped. Some stepped back, others pressed closer. Their laughter died instantly. Whispers broke out. It awakened. Impossible. Not him. Daniel's heart pounded, his vision blurred. For a moment, he was not standing in a market. He was standing on a battlefield. He saw alien warriors charging, weapons clashing, fire raining from the sky, and in the center of it all, himself, or someone who looked like him, wearing the same armor. He tore the chest plate off. Falling to his knees, his hands shook, sweat ran down his face. He felt like something inside him had been touched, pulled awake. The armor didn't dim, it floated slightly, humming as if alive, then dropped beside him with a heavy thud. Lyra's smirk was gone. Her eyes were wide with shock. "That wasn't supposed to happen," she whispered. She hadn't meant for this. She only wanted a joke, a laugh. She never imagined the ancient relic would respond. The shopkeeper's face had gone pale. He backed away, muttering, The prophecy speaks of one not of our blood, one who will wake the armor of Kael'tar. But a human. It cannot be." Daniel looked up, confused, frightened. His voice trembled. What did I just see?" No one answered. The market had gone silent. Every eye was on him, some with fear, some with awe, some with hatred. And in that silence, Daniel realized one terrible truth. His life had just changed forever. It all started as a joke. But something ancient had chosen him, something that would not let him go. The market was still. The once vibrant noise of chatter, haggling, and alien laughter had vanished, replaced by a heavy silence that pressed in on Daniel's ears. He stood there, breathing heavily, his heart still racing from the strange power he had just felt. The armor lay at his feet, dark and cold now, as though it had never been alive at all. Lyra stepped back, her face pale. She had meant this to be a joke, just a harmless challenge to a human who had no idea of the ancient power locked in the chest plate. But now the joke had turned into something far darker, far more dangerous. "Daniel," Lyra said, her voice trembling, I didn't think it would react like that." Daniel glanced around, his eyes wide. The shopkeeper, an old alien with tattered robes, was staring at him as though he had seen a ghost. He muttered under his breath, his voice barely audible. "It was never supposed to be you?" "What are you talking about?" Daniel asked, his voice hoarse. He tried to steady himself, but the adrenaline still buzzed in his veins, his mind swimming with visions of distant battles and the strange, powerful connection to the armor. "The prophecy," the shopkeeper whispered, his voice filled with dread. "The one who wears the armor. He is not chosen by blood but by fate. Only one of pure heart, one who can wield its power, will awaken it." Daniel frowned, confusion still clouding his mind. "Prophecy? What do you mean? I've never even heard of this armor before today." The old man's eyes narrowed, and he looked around as if checking for anyone who might overhear. The crowd had dispersed a little, but there were still a few curious glances from the corners of the market. "Not many know," the shopkeeper continued, leaning in closer. "That armor, that ancient relic, belonged to Kael'tar, the greatest warrior this planet has ever seen. The armor was passed down through generations, but it was always said to be dormant, waiting for the day a true successor would come. And now, it chose you." Lyra stepped forward, her eyes wide with disbelief. "But Daniel isn't. He's just a human. He's not from our world. How can he—" "It doesn't matter where he's from," the shopkeeper interrupted sharply. "The armor doesn't care about his bloodline. It cares about something deeper, something far more important. It has awakened because of him, and now, he has to face the consequences." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "What consequences?" he asked, fear creeping into his voice. The shopkeeper took a deep breath, looking into Daniel's eyes. "The armor will not let you go, not now that it has chosen you. You will be tested whether you want it or not. The power of Kael'tar is inside you now, and the galaxy will soon know it." Lyra grabbed Daniel's arm, her face filled with concern. "Daniel, we need to get out of here. We can't stay. There are people who will try to take you, to take the armor. You don't understand, but they will stop at nothing." Daniel looked at her, trying to process everything. It was too much, too fast. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't even important. He was just a man who cleaned stations and fixed things, a man who had never wanted to be involved in anything grand or dangerous. But now, because of a joke, he was at the center of something much bigger. "We can't run forever," the shopkeeper said, his voice dark. "The enemies of Kael'tar have been waiting for this moment for centuries. They will come for you, and they will not stop until they have the armor." Lyra's grip tightened on Daniel's arm. "The enemies he's talking about, they've been searching for the armor for years. They believe that whoever wears it will have the power to conquer the galaxy. We need to get to the council. We need answers." "Wait," Daniel said, his mind racing. "You mean there are people who want to kill me for wearing this armor? Just because I tried it on?" "It's not just because you tried it on," the shopkeeper said, his voice grim. "It's because the armor has chosen you, and now the galaxy will watch." Before Daniel could respond, the air around them seemed to hum with tension, as if the very atmosphere was charging with energy. In the distance, he could see figures moving, dark silhouettes against the glowing market lights. They were too far to be certain, but he knew what they were. They were coming. Lyra turned to Daniel, urgency in her voice. "We need to move now." Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he followed Lyra through the crowded market. He tried to keep up, but the weight of the armor on his mind felt heavier with each step. The prophecy, the ancient enemies, the power he could still barely understand. All of it was pressing in on him. "Where are we going?" Daniel asked, trying to catch his breath. "To the council," Lyra replied. "They're the only ones who can help us now." The crowd seemed to part for them as they ran, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and awe. Daniel couldn't help but feel like a target, like a hunted man, his every move watched by forces he couldn't yet comprehend. He glanced over his shoulder, half expecting to see someone following them, but all he saw were the shadows of the market closing in behind them. Still, the feeling of being hunted remained, gnawing at him. He wasn't safe anymore, and there was no going back. The world around Daniel blurred as they ran. Lyra's grip on his arm was firm, guiding him through the narrow streets of Kael'tar's capital city, a maze of neon-lit alleys and ancient stone buildings. The air buzzed with tension, the whisper of distant voices and the low hum of the marketplace fading into a chilling silence. The power inside him was like a fire, burning deep within his chest. It was strange, uncomfortable, and terrifying. He could feel it stirring, pulling at him, whispering to him in a language he didn't understand. It wasn't just the armor anymore. It was something inside of him, something that had awakened when the armor had chosen him. And now, that power was beginning to grow. Lyra glanced over her shoulder, her eyes scanning the shadows. "We need to move faster," she said, her voice tight with urgency. Daniel could feel her fear, but he didn't understand why. He had never wanted any of this, yet here he was, part of something far bigger than himself. The armor, the prophecy, the enemies. Who would stop at nothing to take him down? It was all too much. He was just a human who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. But now, he was a target. He could feel their eyes on him, even though no one was around. The power inside him was like a magnetic pull, drawing attention to him, and he hated it. It wasn't something he had asked for, yet here it was, a part of him now. Lyra stopped in front of a large ancient door, hidden in the side of a building. It was made of dark wood, carved with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the dim light. She placed her hand on a symbol near the door, and it opened with a soft click. "This way," she said, pulling him inside. The room was cold, much colder than the streets outside. It was filled with stone walls, old bookshelves, and strange symbols etched into the floor. A large stone table stood at the center of the room, covered in maps and scrolls. It was a place of knowledge, a place where the secrets of Kael'tar were kept hidden from the world. Daniel looked around, trying to take in everything at once, but it was hard to focus. His mind kept drifting back to the power, that strange feeling coursing through his veins. He could feel it moving like something was trying to awaken inside him, something powerful, something ancient. Lyra motioned for him to sit. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice filled with urgency. "The council will be here soon and we need to figure out what to do." Daniel sat down on the cold stone bench, his head spinning. He didn't want to be here, didn't want to be involved in this galaxy-spanning prophecy. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized he had no choice. The armor had chosen him, and now he was part of something that couldn't be undone. "What is this place?" he asked, trying to make sense of everything. "It's a hidden council room," Lyra explained. "Only a few of us know about it. The council is made up of the oldest and wisest members of our society. They hold the secrets of Kael'tar, and they can help us understand what's happening to you." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "And what exactly is happening to me?" Lyra's expression softened, but only for a moment. "I'm not sure, but I think the armor has awakened something inside you. You're not just wearing it, you've bonded with it, and now its power is inside you." Daniel's heart skipped a beat. "What does that mean?" "It means you're no longer just a human," Lyra said, her voice low. "You're something more, something connected to the ancient warriors of Kael'tar. The armor chose you because you have the strength to wield its power. But with that power comes danger, Daniel. There are enemies who will stop at nothing to take it from you." Daniel looked down at his hands, feeling the weight of what she was saying. He wasn't just some maintenance worker anymore. He was something else, something dangerous. And that thought made his stomach churn. Suddenly, the door behind them creaked open and a figure stepped into the room. Lyra stood quickly, her posture rigid. "The council is here," she whispered. Daniel stood up as well, his body stiff with tension. He had no idea what to expect, but whatever it was about to change everything. The council was the key to understanding what had happened to him, but it also felt like the last step before the storm broke. He could feel the power within, him pushing at the edges of his control, urging him to act, to fight. The figure who entered the room was tall, even for an alien, with long flowing robes that shimmered with gold and silver patterns. His face was covered by a mask, but his eyes, deep, ancient, and wise, glowed faintly as they looked over Daniel. There was a sense of calm in his presence, but also a quiet intensity. "I am Counselor Thal," the figure said, his voice deep and commanding. "You are the one who has awakened Kael'tar's armor, the one the prophecy spoke of." Daniel swallowed, his throat dry. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Thal nodded slowly. "None of us ever do," he said. "But now that you have awakened the armor, you must understand one thing. You are a part of a much bigger picture. The galaxy will change because of you. The armor has chosen you, and you will be tested." Daniel's heart raced. "Tested? What do you mean?" Thal stepped closer, his eyes never leaving Daniel. "You are the key to something greater, something ancient. But you must be ready. There are those who will seek the armor, who will stop at nothing to take it from you. And there are others who believe that the armor's power must be destroyed before it can be used to conquer the galaxy." Daniel looked at Lyra, her eyes full of worry. "What do I have to do?" he asked, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. Thal's eyes softened for a moment. "You must learn to control the power within you. Only then will you be able to decide whether to use it for good, or to destroy it once and for all." The room fell into an eerie silence as Counselor Thal's words hung in the air. Daniel could barely breathe. Control the power? Destroy it? The weight of the prophecy was like an anchor around his neck, pulling him deeper into an unknown abyss. Lyra stood at his side, her eyes filled with concern, but also something else: determination. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Daniel, you don't have to face this alone. We'll figure this out, together." But even as she spoke, the atmosphere outside the council room shifted. A low hum echoed through the building, a vibration that seemed to shake the very foundations. Daniel could feel it too, a strange pull in the air as if the power inside him was reacting to something distant, something dark. Thal raised his hand, signaling for Lyra to step back. His eyes never left Daniel's. "You must understand," he said, his voice grave. "The enemies who seek the armor will not wait. They will come for you now." "What enemies?" Daniel asked, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and confusion. "You keep talking about these enemies, but I don't understand. Who are they?" Thal's expression hardened. "They are the Marakar, an ancient faction who seek to control the power of Kael'tar's armor. For centuries they have been waiting for the right moment to strike. They believe the armor holds the key to unimaginable power, and they will stop at nothing to take it from you." Lyra's face darkened. "We can't wait for them to come to us. We need to act fast. The Marakar are ruthless. They won't care that you're human, they'll see you as a weapon to control." Daniel's heart raced. A weapon? He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a warrior. He was just a man who had stumbled into something he didn't understand. "We need to leave," Lyra insisted, grabbing his arm once more. "We have to get to the safe zone where we can regroup. The Marakar won't stop until they have you." Before Daniel could respond, the room suddenly vibrated with a deafening crash, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps. The door to the council chamber shattered into pieces, and a group of heavily armored soldiers burst through, their weapons aimed directly at Daniel. "Marakar," Thal muttered under his breath, his eyes flashing with fear. "They're here." Lyra pushed Daniel to the side, instinctively drawing a weapon from her side. The weapon hummed to life in her hands, glowing with a dangerous energy. "Get back!" she shouted, positioning herself between Daniel and the advancing soldiers. Daniel felt the heat of the moment seeping into his bones. He had never been in a fight like this before. His body shook with fear, but something else stirred within him, something that was not his own. It was the armor, the power inside him. He could feel it thrumming, calling to him, urging him to act. One of the Marakar soldiers raised a rifle, aiming straight at Lyra. Without thinking, Daniel stepped forward, his body moving before his mind could catch up. The armor around him surged to life, and he reached out instinctively, grabbing the soldier's rifle with one hand. The soldier's eyes widened in shock as the rifle was torn from his grip, thrown across the room by an unseen force. Daniel stumbled, his heart racing as the power coursed through him. His vision blurred for a moment, and he saw flashes of ancient battles, warriors in the same armor, their hands crackling with energy, tearing through armies like they were paper. "Daniel!" Lyra shouted, pulling him back to reality. "You can't let it control you." But it was too late. The armor's power surged again, and before he knew it, Daniel's hands were glowing with the same intense energy that had pulsed through the armor. He raised his hands, and a bolt of pure energy shot out, striking the Marakar soldier in the chest. The soldier was thrown back, slamming into the wall with a sickening thud. The other soldiers froze, their weapons raised, but they hesitated now. They had never seen a human wield the power of Kael'tar's armor before. They had underestimated him. Lyra stepped forward, her weapon still glowing, but she lowered it as she turned to Daniel. "Daniel, you have to focus," she said, her voice soft but urgent. "The armor isn't just about power, it's about control. If you lose control, you could destroy everything around you." Daniel nodded, trying to steady his breathing. He could feel the power surging through him, begging to be unleashed, but he couldn't let it take over. He was still just a man, still just Daniel. And if he lost himself in the armor's strength, there would be no going back. The Marakar soldiers began to regroup, glaring at him with hatred and fear. They didn't know what to make of him, but they knew one thing. He had to be stopped. The leader of the Marakar stepped forward, his voice cold and menacing. "You are a fool, human," he said. "You may have awakened the armor, but you will not control it. You are nothing but a pawn in a game you don't understand." Daniel's fists clenched, but he forced himself to take a step back. The power was still there, lurking beneath the surface, but now he understood he couldn't just react. He had to think. He had to be smarter than them. Lyra turned to him, her face serious. "This is the first test, Daniel," she said. "The armor didn't just choose you for its strength. It chose you because it believes you can wield its power with wisdom. But that wisdom starts now." The Marakar leader smirked, clearly underestimating him. "You think you can stand against us, human? You think you can control the armor?" Daniel took a deep breath, feeling the power settle inside him. He wasn't just a weapon, he was more than that. And he wasn't going to let them control him. "I'll show you," Daniel muttered under his breath. With a sharp motion, he raised his hands again, and this time, he focused, channeling the power into a precise, controlled blast. The energy shot forward, hitting the Marakar leader square in the chest. The leader staggered back, but he wasn't finished yet. "This isn't over," he spat. "We'll be back. You can't run from your destiny." But Daniel stood tall, the power still humming around him, waiting. "I'm not running anymore." The Marakar soldiers retreated into the shadows, nursing their wounds, but they didn't leave without a promise. One that hung in the air like a storm cloud. "We'll be back," their leader had said, his voice dripping with malice. "And next time we will not be so kind." The room fell silent once they were gone, the echoes of their threats lingering like the ringing of a bell. Daniel stood in the center, breathing heavily, his heart still racing from the battle. He could feel the energy that had surged through him, still buzzing beneath the surface, but it wasn't the thrill of victory that he felt. It was fear. Fear of what he had just done, of the power he had unleashed without truly understanding. Lyra stepped toward him, her eyes wide with concern but also a sense of pride. "You did well," she said, her voice soft but firm. "But it's not over. They'll come back stronger, and you'll need to be ready." Daniel nodded, but didn't speak. He could still feel the armor's power inside him, thrumming with an energy that felt both foreign and intimate. It was like it was a part of him now, like it had always been there, waiting for him to awaken it. But what did it want from him? And why had it chosen him? He had no answers, only questions that seemed to grow by the minute. Lyra gave him a moment to collect his thoughts before speaking again. "We can't stay here. The council will want to see you and we need their guidance. You're not just fighting for your life now, Daniel. You're fighting for the fate of the galaxy." Daniel's eyes met hers, and for a brief moment the weight of her words hit him like a physical blow. He wasn't just a man caught in a strange situation. He wasn't just a human who had stumbled into something bigger than himself. He was the key to something ancient and powerful, and there were forces out there that would kill to control it. "You don't understand," Daniel said, shaking his head. "I'm not a warrior, I'm not a leader, I didn't ask for any of this." Lyra's expression softened and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know you didn't, but the armor has chosen you. And whether you like it or not, you have to rise to the occasion. You have to learn to control it or you'll lose yourself in it." Daniel stared at her, his chest tightening. "I can feel it. The power inside me, it's overwhelming. I don't know how to control it. I don't know if I can." Lyra nodded slowly, her face serious. "That's why you need the council. They've been preparing for this moment for centuries. They know more about the armor and its power than anyone. You don't have to do this alone, Daniel." Daniel took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. The weight of the armor wasn't just physical, it was mental and emotional, a burden that weighed him down at every turn. He wasn't ready for this, and yet it was already too late to turn back. "I don't know if I can be the man they expect me to be," Daniel whispered, his voice heavy with doubt. Lyra's eyes softened as she stepped closer. "You don't have to be perfect, Daniel. You just have to be strong enough to do what's right. And that's something you have inside you. I've seen it." She turned to lead the way, but Daniel stood still, looking at the shattered door where the Marakar had entered. The promise they had left behind weighed heavily on his chest. They would return, and when they did, he had no idea if he would be ready for them. How could he be? He was just a man, a regular human who had been thrown into an impossible situation. The power inside him pulsed again like a heartbeat. He could feel it wrapping around him, tempting him, begging him to use it, to fight, to conquer. But what would that cost? Could he really wield this power without losing himself? "Daniel?" Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. She was already at the door waiting for him. "We don't have much time, the Marakar won't stop." Daniel snapped out of his thoughts and nodded. He wasn't ready, but he had no choice. He couldn't stay here, lost in his doubts. He had to move forward. He walked toward Lyra, the weight of the armor still heavy on his chest, but now he could feel something else. A connection, a bond with the armor that was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't just about strength. It was about trust, trusting himself, trusting Lyra, and trusting that he could rise above the power that threatened to overwhelm him. "I'm ready," he said quietly, though the uncertainty still lingered in his voice. "But only if we do this together." Lyra smiled at him, her eyes filled with pride. "That's all I've ever wanted, Daniel." Together they left the council room and made their way through the darkened corridors, the hum of the armor in his chest like a constant reminder of the storm that was coming. They didn't know what awaited them at the council, but they knew one thing for certain. There was no going back now. The journey to the council was long and treacherous. Kael'tar's capital city, once alive with trade and commerce, now felt like a cold, shadowed place. The streets were quieter, and the weight of impending danger hung in the air like an invisible fog. The Marakar soldiers weren't the only ones who had taken notice of Daniel. Word had spread, and with it, a growing sense of fear and curiosity. Lyra walked beside him, her pace quick and determined, but there was a nervous energy in the air. She had always been confident, always had the answers, but now even she seemed uncertain. "Lyra?" Daniel asked, his voice low as they rounded a corner. What do you think will happen at the council? Are they going to help me? Or will they just treat me like a weapon? Lyra's gaze was fixed ahead, her jaw tight. They'll help you, Daniel. The council has always been the guardians of Kael'tar's history. They understand the power of the armor better than anyone. But they may also treat you as a threat. Not because they don't believe in you, but because they fear what you might become. Daniel let her words sink in. Fear. It was the same fear he had been feeling. Fear of the power he could barely control. Fear of becoming someone he didn't recognize. The armor had chosen him. But what if it was too much? What if the power it gave him consumed him instead? As they neared the council's stronghold, a towering structure built into the heart of the city, Daniel felt the weight of his uncertainty, pressing down on him. The building loomed ahead like a fortress, its walls made of dark stone etched with ancient symbols, a reminder of Kael'tar's long history of conflict and conquest. Stay close, Lyra said as they approached the entrance. The council doesn't take kindly to surprises. They'll want to see your control, your ability to wield the armor's power. Daniel nodded, though his stomach churned. How could he show them control when he felt like he had none? How could he convince them he wasn't a weapon, when he barely understood the forces coursing through him? They passed through the gates and into the council's hall, a vast chamber illuminated by the soft glow of floating crystals. The room was lined with ancient bookshelves, scrolls, and relics from Kael'tar's past. At the far end of the hall sat a group of beings, their faces hidden in the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly as they observed the newcomers. Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady. Counselors, I bring before you the one who has awakened, the armor of Kael'tar. The council murmured among themselves, their voices low and measured. Daniel felt every eye on him, each gaze like a weight pressing down on his chest. He wasn't sure if it was the armor's power or his own fear that made his heart race, but he couldn't seem to shake the feeling that he was being judged. One of the counselors, a tall figure with golden skin and silver eyes, spoke first. You are the human who has bonded with Kael'tar's armor. The voice was deep, resonant but cold. What do you know of its power? Daniel swallowed hard. I know it's dangerous, he said, his voice shaky. I know it's controlling, me more than I'm controlling it. But I don't know why I was chosen. I'm not a warrior, I don't deserve this power. The counselors exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Then the golden-skinned counselor nodded. It is true, he said. The armor does not choose its bearer based on blood. It chooses based on strength, but more importantly, it chooses based on heart. Lyra stepped forward. He may not have the training, but he has the heart. And he's not here to conquer. He's here to protect. Another counselor, an older being with pale blue skin and piercing red eyes, spoke next. Protection or destruction? He asked, his voice sharp. The armor has always been a weapon, a tool of war. It was forged to end empires, not protect them. Daniel felt a surge of panic. I don't want to be a weapon, he said, his voice rising. I don't want to destroy anything. But if I lose control, if the power takes over, I don't know what will happen. I don't know what I'll do. The room grew silent, the weight of Daniel's words hanging in the air. The council seemed to consider him for a long moment, and then the golden-skinned counselor spoke again. We will test you, Daniel of Earth, he said. We will see if you are worthy of the armor's power, if you can control it, or if it will control you. Daniel's heart skipped a beat. Test me? He asked. How? The counselor raised his hand and the room began to shift. The walls seemed to fade away, replaced by a vast expanse of nothingness. Daniel felt his feet leave the ground and suddenly, he was standing in the center of a battlefield, the air thick with the smell of smoke and the sound of clashing metal. Lyra was beside him, her expression determined but anxious. It's an illusion, she said. A trial. You must face your fears, your doubts, and the power of the armor. Daniel looked around, seeing enemy soldiers advancing from every direction, their weapons raised, ready for battle. His pulse quickened. and the familiar hum of the armor surged within him. The power was there, right at his fingertips, but so was the fear. Could he use it without losing himself? You must make a choice, Lyra's voice echoed in his mind. Will you control the armor or will it control you? Daniel closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. He could feel the power pulsing through him, but he could also feel his own strength, the strength to fight for something more than just survival. He wasn't a weapon. He was a man, and he would use the power to protect, not destroy. With a shout, he raised his hands and the power of the armor surged outward, controlled, focused. Energy shot through the air, striking the enemy soldiers, disarming them without killing. He felt the armor responding, like it was finally in sync with his will, not the other way around. When the illusion faded and Daniel was back in the council hall, the counselors were silent. The golden-skinned counselor nodded once, approval in his eyes. You have passed the test, Daniel of Earth, he said. You have shown control, but the battle is far from over. Daniel's chest was heaving, his mind still racing. But for the first time since he had put on the armor, he felt a sense of peace. Maybe he wasn't just a weapon. Maybe, just maybe, he could use this power for something good. The council hall was quiet, the tension still thick in the air after the test. Daniel stood in the center, his breath coming in slow, controlled gasps, the power of the armor humming faintly beneath his skin. It was a strange feeling, one he hadn't fully understood until now. He wasn't just wearing it anymore. He had become one with it. The connection was deep, almost as if the armor had always been a part of him, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The golden-skinned counselor stepped forward, his expression unreadable but thoughtful. You have passed our test, Daniel of Earth, he said, his voice steady. But the true test is not just of your control, it is of your heart, of your ability to make the right choice when the galaxy itself will demand more from you than you can imagine. Daniel's gaze flickered to Lyra, standing by his side, her expression one of quiet pride mixed with concern. They had come so far, and yet, Daniel knew deep down the hardest part was still ahead of him. The Marikar would not stop. They had seen his power, and now they would come for it, for him. You have already seen the consequences of what happens when you lose control, the counselor continued. But there are greater forces at play here. The armor was never meant to be wielded by just one person. It was forged to be a tool of unity, a way to bring the galaxy together, not to divide it. But in the wrong hands, it could be used to bring ruin to everything. Daniel swallowed hard. He had been trying to convince himself that he was strong enough to handle this, but now, facing the council's solemn judgment, he realized how fragile everything truly was. The Marikar had been just the beginning. What if others, more powerful, more ruthless, came after him next? What if he wasn't ready for what the galaxy demanded? What do you mean by the right choice? Daniel asked, his voice steady, despite the storm brewing in his chest. The golden counselor's eyes seemed to soften just for a moment. The choice, Daniel, is yours. Will you use the armor to protect the innocent, to fight for peace? Or will you wield its power as a weapon of conquest? The Marikar are not the only ones who desire its power. There are those who would use it to control the entire galaxy, to destroy all who stand in their way. You must choose where you stand. Daniel felt a chill run through him, the weight of his decision pressing down like an unbearable weight. The armor, the power. It wasn't just about fighting back. It was about knowing when to fight and when to stand aside. Could he really carry such a burden? Could he lead the galaxy into an age of peace? Or would he become the very thing he had feared? The weapon of destruction? Why me? Daniel whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Why was I chosen for this? Lyra stepped closer to him, her voice soft but full of conviction. Because you're human, she said, and because you understand that the true strength of the armor isn't in its power. It's in your ability to choose, to make the right decision when everything seems lost. Daniel looked into her eyes, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, he felt a spark of hope. She was right. He had always been just a man who fixed things, a man who had stumbled into this mess by accident. But the armor had chosen him. Not because of his strength, not because of his bloodline, but because of something deeper: his heart, his ability to choose when to fight and when to protect. The council remained silent as Daniel's thoughts swirled, the weight of their words sinking into his bones. The armor had given him power, but it wasn't just about strength. It was about responsibility. Responsibility to others, to his world, to the galaxy. And that responsibility was something he couldn't ignore, not anymore. Suddenly, a sharp, haunting sound echoed through the hall, a warning. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and Daniel knew what it meant before the council did. The Marikar had arrived. The doors to the council hall burst open, and the Marikar soldiers stormed in, their armor gleaming like black metal in the dim light. At their head stood the Marikar leader, his face twisted with fury and contempt. "You think you can hide, human?" The Marikar leader spat, his voice venomous. "The galaxy does not belong to you, and neither does Kael'tar's armor. You will fall like all the others before you." Daniel's heart raced, but this time it wasn't with fear. It was with purpose. He could feel the power of the armor coursing through him, but this time, he knew how to control it. He knew what he had to do. The Golden Counselor raised a hand, signaling the council to stay back. "The time has come, Daniel," he said, his voice calm but filled with an ancient weight. "The galaxy is watching. Your choice will shape the future." Daniel stepped forward, his body now completely in sync with the armor. He could feel it pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. The power inside him, not a burden but a tool, one that he could wield for good, for protection, for peace. "You want the armor?" Daniel said, his voice steady but filled with the strength of 1,000 warriors. "Then come and take it." With that, he raised his hands and the armor responded, sending a wave of pure energy crashing through the room. The Marikar soldiers faltered, caught off guard by the sheer force of the blast. But they quickly recovered, advancing again, their weapons raised. They didn't understand. Couldn't understand the force they were dealing with. Daniel's mind was clear. This wasn't about killing. This was about defending. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the galaxy, for the innocent people who had no voice, no power, no armor to protect them. With a single motion, Daniel released another burst of energy, this time more focused, more controlled. The Marikar leader's armor cracked under the pressure, sending him flying backward. The soldiers behind him hesitated, and in that moment, Daniel saw something in their eyes. Fear. The power that had once terrified him, that had once threatened to consume him, was now his ally. He was no longer just a human. He was the protector of the galaxy. As the last of the Marikar soldiers fell, Daniel stood tall, his chest heaving with the weight of what had just transpired. The council, silent and solemn, nodded in approval. "You have made the right choice, Daniel," the Golden Counselor said, his voice filled with respect. "You have awakened not only the armor, but also the true power of Kael'tar, the power of unity." Daniel nodded, the burden of his new reality heavy on his shoulders, but he no longer felt afraid. He wasn't alone in this. And for the first time, he understood what the armor had truly chosen him for. To bring people together, to fight for what was right, and to protect the galaxy no matter the cost.